While sales slumps can happen for any number of reasons, they don't happen without warning. Hello, 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 and welcome to More Than Money, a podcast where we have nuanced conversations about money, business, and life, where we take the time to explore the human side of money because success with money is never just about the numbers. I'm your host, Jacquette Timmons, and I am really, really glad you've taken the time to join me today. Now, if you've been following me at least for the last couple of weeks, you know that we are approaching a major milestone. We are now 11 episodes away from our 200th episode. So that means it is right around the corner. And I would truly love to celebrate this with you by dedicating that episode to answering your questions. So I'm curious, what you got for me? Maybe you've got a question that's related to how to better manage the financial stress that's in your life. Or maybe you've got a question in search of ideas on how to improve your overall financial well-being. Maybe it's a question that will give you a little bit more clarity as you wrestle with making a major life or business decision and the financial implications thereof. Hopefully, these are just a few examples that can get your juices flowing and you'll be able to submit a more specific question. And remember, you can do so anonymously. So go to jacquettetimmons.com/more than money, all one word, -200. Again, jacquettetimmons.com/more than money, -200. And by the way, if you tried to do this previously and you weren't able to, the page has been fixed. And so now you can go on ahead and submit your question. And really, I cannot wait to celebrate the 200th episode by answering your questions. And I really appreciate you helping me to, again, celebrate this milestone. But in the meantime, let's get into today's episode. And I want you to go back to the beginning of the year. People were on edge. As you may recall, there was a flurry of layoffs at the beginning of the year, mostly with tech companies. In January alone, Amazon had confirmed that they were laying off more than 18,000 employees. Salesforce cut 8,000 employees. Microsoft laid off 10,000, and Google cut 12,000 jobs. In February, Zoom laid off about 15% of its workforce. Yahoo cut 20%. In March, Meta announced it was cutting an additional 10,000 after having announced that it had, or had not even having announced that they had already laid off 11,000 people about 4 months earlier than that. And then Accenture made the announcement that they were laying off 19,000 employees. And these were just the well-known tech companies. According to layoff.fyi, quote, 956 tech companies laid off about 227,621 staff so far in 2023. And that was compared to 164,411 layoffs in 2022. And then you add on top of this the concern about the financial health of the US banks. According to the FDIC, 2 banks failed in March, 1 in May, and 1 in July. I gave you that quick recap to, reorient you to what was happening between January and June, or even July, because these were the events that were the backdrop for the conversations that I was having, starting in late April and going all the way through to early June with my business besties and a few of my clients, more specifically about the sales landscape. And they were sharing with me their experiences of prospects ghosting them, of dealing with unusually long sales cycles, of longstanding clients deciding not to renew, and just generally of sales slowing down. And it all added up to them expressing the same sentiment. One, things are really weird. And then asking me the same question, what was I noticing? Well, at the time, here's what I was noticing. First, my business was having a very different experience. By June, thanks to exceeding my goals for speaking engagements, my year-to-date revenue was already more than 50% of last year's earnings. Second, uncertainty was at an all-time high due to the debt ceiling debate. Like, do you remember the weeks leading up to that June deadline? So I simply believed that people were feeling a bit cautious about spending, waiting until the debt ceiling debate had been resolved. And third, while it is natural for sales, revenue, and profits to ebb and flow, I think folks got a little used to what was happening 2020 through 2022 for a lot of businesses. I think folks forgot about the ebb part of that equation because of how well a lot of their businesses performed from 2020 through 2022. But here's the reality of running a business. While sales slumps can happen for any number of reasons, they don't happen without warning. Yet, they somehow seem to take us by surprise when they occur. At least that's what happened to me this summer when I experienced my own sales slowdown. It's when I had an, oh, this is what they were talking about moment. Now, let's be real. With 3 decades of working as an entrepreneur under my belt, this is not the first time, or this wasn't the first time I was finding myself in this situation. However, this time, and thankfully, I was prepared for it financially, so I didn't freak out too much when it came to the money part. But I was surprised at how unprepared I was for it emotionally, especially given the fact that it wasn't my first time down that rodeo road, if you will. At first, I was in shock, and the shock was followed by a whole lot of questioning, but not of the useful kind, at least not initially. My questions were like, how did I miss the warning signs? Or what am I doing wrong? Or did my optimism blind me to the reality of the state of our economy and what was going on with big businesses and how that would ripple down to small businesses like my own, or to, the businesses that I provide services to? Like, all of that was like, what was I missing there? And in addition to that, just a more macro understanding of, despite the economic numbers, there are still people forecasting a mild recession this year. And now, at least at the time of this recording, we have a potential government shutdown on the horizon. So all of this is now my backdrop, right? And it can make it seem as if the questions, what did I miss in terms of the warning signs? What am I doing wrong? Was I overly optimistic? It can make it seem that those are not good questions. And the truth of the matter is that they are. And they are because my answers to those questions, your answers to those questions, can help you respond both strategically and tactically. The problem, though, was with me asking them from a place of self-blame and self-doubt. And that's a problem because it's not constructive, it's not forward-thinking, and it's not solution-oriented. And in addition to listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube, if you follow me on social media, then you have likely seen a post of mine that is a part of our rotation. And it is a quote from me that says, business metrics matter, but how do you navigate the emotional terrain of running a business? Of course, Slow sales can reveal things about your business that you may need to address. Messaging, marketing, positioning, those are a few areas that come to mind. But there is also an emotional journey that you go on as well. And it is one of the reasons I can say without any hint of sarcasm that a sales slump can actually be beneficial because it can reveal what emotions are getting in the way of helping you effectively deal with this predicament. My initial reaction was disappointment. I was on a financial roll, right? Even exceeding some of my goals. And then it just felt like it came to a sudden, abrupt stop. And this feeling of disappointment was followed by feeling extremely frustrated. I began to wonder, what am I doing wrong? And why weren't my efforts yielding the results that I expected? And then this was followed by second guessing myself. And again, questioning, what did I miss or dismiss? And the reality is, you and I are intimately acquainted with these feelings, but they are exasperated for us entrepreneurs and small business owners when faced with a downturn in sales, which can come with some significant consequences. So if you're not careful, you might be tempted to travel down that rabbit hole of negative self-talk and stay there. You might be tempted to let your well-being take a hit as you work to, excavate yourself from the slump and create the space for the sales to surge. And you might be tempted to focus all of your time, all of your energy, all of your resources on simply seeking that thing that will provide you with some short-term relief at the expense of also looking for a solution that will help you get out of your current situation and help you be better prepared for a future slump. And here's where a bit of irony comes into play. On the flip side, a period of slow sales can provide you with a fresh perspective as well as new opportunities. They can remind you of how resilient and resourceful you are because you've thrived in the face of adversity before, and this is just another scenario that you got to work through. And they can also help to bolster your emotional toolkit. As long as you remember that slow sales, I should say, let me repeat that. As long as you remember that slow sales are temporary, even when the feeling of it seems permanent. One of my tools for managing my summer sales slump experience was journaling. And this is what I wrote one day. Don't let your challenging times be a single-use lesson. And that is why I am in your ear and maybe even on your screen if you're on YouTube with today's episode and the message behind it. And my hope is that the next time you have a sales slump, that it'll remind you to pay attention to your emotions, but not just the emotions that keep you stuck, but what are the clues in those emotions that keep you stuck that can help you get you to the other side? Because acknowledging and processing them can be just as vital as tweaking your messaging, your marketing, and your positioning, or crunching the numbers, because you really need both. It's a combination that is designed to help you emerge from the slump better and stronger. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't say this before concluding today's episode. I know that being financially prepared for my recent slowdown gave me a degree of space that I would not have had if I were in survival mode. So if you are in the midst of a sales slump and you are in survival mode and you don't have that space, give yourself some grace. Well, that is it for today, folks. Thank you so much, as always, for listening all the way until the end or watching all the way until the end if you are on YouTube. I thank you for all of that. And before you hop, if today's episode sparked an aha or a reflection, I'd love to hear more about those details. So send me a DM on Instagram, or if you're watching on YouTube, make a comment below. And don't forget about my invitation to join me in celebrating the 200th episode by submitting your question or the questions that people ask you, because you're the go-to person in your circle when it comes to money. Submit your question or the ones that people ask you to jacquettetimmons.com/morethanmoney-200. Once more, thank you for listening today. If you'd like to show appreciation for this podcast or this particular episode, please leave a review and a rating, and that will help us to get the word out to other people. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review, because we do take the time to read those as well. And as always, if you'd like to buy me a coffee, here's how you can do that. buymeacoffee.com/Jacquette, buymeacoffee.com/Jacquette. I will be back with another episode, and I hope that you will too. Until then, remember, it's about more than money.